Do you often write poems that you're not totally sure who these people are? Do you find out who they are maybe along the journey of writing the poem?
Some of these poems, especially in the section about love and loss, are based on my personal experiences or gathered from personal experiences of my close relatives or something, but not all of them. So, a lot of the poetry comes from a collection of people's, these common experiences that a lot of people I know or people I've read about or people that I've seen, or honestly, sometimes a snippet of conversation I overheard. Yes, I do eavesdrop. And the poem just kind of grows out of it.
Is it difficult to not share too much about yourself, even as we do this interview? You've mentioned several times that there's been some personal challenges that you've faced. Do you worry that it would change the perception of the reader if they knew too much about the author? Not just in your case, but does it happen to you? Do you ever find yourself thinking too much about who wrote that and not necessarily the words that are on the page?
No, actually, when I'm reading poetry or when I'm reading a novel or anything like that, I find it fascinating to learn more about the author, because I think that you can't write without putting a little bit of yourself into what you're writing.
You mentioned the word process before, and that is, I told you I interview a bunch of authors. A lot of crime authors, some novels, historians, and their process is they have an idea, they wait to go on a vacation, and they sit down and they start clicking away at their laptop, and they get stressed out as it gets close to time to hand in that final draft. Is it similar or much different for poetry? I mean, I imagine it doesn't sound like it was that type of situation for you.
No, once I found the book counselor and she held my hand, it really became a pretty clear path that I was taking to get this book to a published edition. I think that for somebody who is writing something based on factual things, you do have to just sit down and dig through the notes. For instance, I was a reporter at the Newtown Bee for a long time. I was the editor. Writing articles that are based on facts and you're just putting the facts into a readable form, or writing an opinion piece like the editorial, is very different from writing poetry, which for me is something that really comes from my heart.
How much of what I'll read in here is fact versus fiction?
It's hard to say. I think every single poem in there does have a little bit of fiction mixed into the fact. I don't think any of my poems are 100% fact. And interestingly, I sent a copy to my sister, and I said to her, I'm really curious how you respond to the ones that are about my mom and about my sister. Our mother passed away when we were young. We were in our 20s. Our dad passed away when we were toddlers. And my oldest sister, passed away in 2019. So some of those poems are very much grown out of that kind of loss and just processing that. So I'm curious what my sister is going to feel in reading these.
Will it be obvious to the reader, to who is not related to you, that these stories are about these people?
Not necessarily. No. A couple of them I did dedicate specifically to my sister Deborah, and also to a good friend of mine who lost her husband unexpectedly. The rest of them are ones I think that, and see, this is the thing. When I write poetry, I want it to be accessible. I want it to be something that anybody can really relate to. They don't have to dig deep into my poems. I mean, sometimes a rose is just a rose.
And the woman with the canned peaches, she may have existed, she may not. Coincidentally, we have a ball canning jar system in our pantry that we have not opened yet. It's a system. It's a whole machine and everything. Wow. If we could go back, because we had some background noise before, but talk to us a little more about the pandemic and that time that you had cut off from the rest of the world. And you had said that was a time that maybe you were able to tap into some memories from the past and move this project forward.
Well, actually, this project really moved forward kind of post-pandemic. It was really moved forward in the last year. During the pandemic, even though the Bee was not printed for 2 months, John Voquette, who is now the editor of the Newtown Bee, and myself stayed on just for those 2 months and just did online stuff for the Newtown Bee because we just felt it was so important. And then, eventually they were able to officially bring everybody back. I was really busy and I didn't really do a lot. I have one poem in there that is about the pandemic. And prior to that, I'm actually a cancer survivor, which is kind of a weird thing for me to say. To me, having had cancer and survived it is like this little glitch in the middle of my life. Weirdly enough, I wrote nothing about that whole experience. And I don't know if it's something that will pop up again one day or not.
That's interesting. Is that the only intensely personal thing that's happened to you that you've opted not to write about? Were you at the Bee during Sandy Hook?
I was. And there is one poem in there that I think people... It wasn't written because of 2012. It wasn't written because of 1214. It's about the loss of a child. And I think that people who have lost a child, whether it's miscarriage or murder or illness or whatever, might find that one something they can relate to. But again, these really huge events, I think, are something that are still simmering within me. I'm still processing my mother's death. She died 40-some years ago. I think that the bigger an event is in my life, anyway, the longer it takes me to work it out. One of the poems that I picked to read to you is one of those about love. I think that love has a lot of different angles, and love has a lot of different aspects to it, and how it begins and often how it ends. Building Our Castle is the name of this poem, and it is one about the early origins of love. And I think it also is, it's very good for this time of year, for summertime. Building Our Castle. At the ocean, we choose our piece of beach, white sand garnished by strands of dulse and discarded masks of crabs. The sun is young still as we, eye to eye, kneel and begin to build. Our hands are fleshy bulldozers that push and shove. Our fingers delicate cranes that pluck and plant. Above, the sun has stretched, glazed the waves that tongue the shore. You sculpt a tower on the left, inside the spired wall. Then roof it with shimmery shells. A lobster claw bridges the gap between shore and clamshell door cracked open to expose the hollow chambers. The sun pulls the water to her chin as we deepen the moat to protect what we have made.
It's wonderful. Do you ever get stuck on a word? Do you ever go back and is there one word that sometimes sticks out, or is there one line or phrase?
I think words like stretched, glazed, waves, shimmering, those kinds of words are ones that I might repeat throughout a lot of different poems. I like words that bring up an image for people, I hope. Well, like I said, I think that, love has a way of morphing in that for everybody. It doesn't always stay all bright and beautiful. This one is called This Is Not Love. This is not love. You think it is, but love is more subtle than what you feel. It is not a hard blow to your heart, blood beating its way out of your veins, vibrations that shake your gut, blind you, rock you, mute you. It is not teasing, pleasing promises that titillate words on your tongue. Love, this moment must be forgiven, forgotten. You will not notice time has passed. Hold a finger to lips that would swear allegiance to what this is not.
Nancy, do you know any of these by heart?
I don't. I actually don't know my poems by heart. And like I said, because I really feel like I am fed by a muse, there are times I go back and read a poem a few days after I've written it and like, oh, where'd that come from?
In our last couple of moments here together, the most important part, where do we get this?
The Peach Quartet and Other Poems is available at Amazon.com. You can find out more information at thepeachquartet.com, which is my website, or you can email me at info@thepeachquartet.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us on this beautiful, if not a little noisy afternoon at the wonderful Treadwell Park here in Newtown.
Thank you so much, John. I hope that you enjoy reading the book that I've given to you, and I hope that other readers will find their way to it too.